with you? What's your name? TT? My name's Steve. I feel like you mad pretty. It's cool if I finish with my name. It's cool with you.
But you see, that's Whack 100 proudly, aiming to put plenty of weapons into the street to further increase black on black crime. And further there, we see him on No Jumper, playing the victim in an attempt to win a kind of trivial argument. Now, what's not trivial is that Adam damn near super violated Whack 100.
So I think if you really are the business mogul that you say you are, you should stop pretending to sell diapers and you should start a black-owned gun company.
So you're pretending to sell diapers. Now, there was also a moment in this podcast where Whack asked, and it was before the argument, he said, "Oh, what do you think about interviewing some of Akon's artists? You know, bring them over here." And Adam said, "No, his schedule's booked for the week. He don't got no time for Akon and his artists." And that reminds me of the whole game story.
I'm really missing my daughter right now. She should have been home.
A little creator, YouTube creator, made this cool observation about the management decisions of the game in regards to Whack 100 no longer seeming to be in the picture. In Whack's response to that stupid observation, he said that he can get to the point and do a No Jumper interview, in which Adam was really geeked about. He had a similar tone to what was displayed in this episode, where they're going back and forth about, Alec Baldwin, but then it later becomes more, because Whack is going to eventually promise that he can get No Jumper TV up and running.
Get on the bed,
but
go.
On the bed. Up. Doesn't believe anything that Whack says.
Lay down.
Much like how
Good.
academics doesn't believe much
Sit
of
down.
what Whack has to say either anymore. And again, that T Grizzly dog face situation.
You good? Sit down.
Caused quite the hit to Whack 100's already, dangling by a thread of a reputation. It's almost like it's all the way in the dust now. And that violation makes Whack 100 feel like he needs to prove himself. Like he needs to start flexing on Adam, and he has to show, like, no, look, I'm getting more money than No Jumper. I'm a better boss than you are, Adam. And I feel like this might be a mistake, and I'll explain right after the clip.
You got 5 motherfuckers sitting at a table. Since we talking about you want to go there. Now that other bed is still on the table. Because remember, from what you see and what I see is 2 totally different things. You got 5 motherfuckers at a table. Let's say they 200 a pop, that's 1,000. But they moving 70, 80,000 computers. Motherfucker, that shit you doing with these cats in the news and the other shit is not generating no money, bro.
You don't think? I will allow you that delusion.
And I've said this, and I know it sounds f***ed up. I'm not these dudes in this building. I operate in the shit I'm part of, and the shit I'm in. Nothing but sports, you would say, ain't doing that, right?
No, I'm waiting to see what becomes of it.
Nothing but sports is already operating at 300,000. No, 238 a month already.
230 of what?
238,000 a month right now.
You are saying
Nothing but sports is operating at 238,000 a month right now, and you don't know it and you don't see it, but it's on somebody's TV guide right now, and it's going the next 4 months.
paying $1 per month. Subscribers.
No matter what they paying, because we're getting paid a whole nother fee. We're in 6.2 million homes.
How? Who's paying for it?
See, this is now. Ask me that. How is this happening?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Right? Because I'm just giving you another business, right? That people don't see. It's not super huge. It's not super popular as of now, but it's generating income, contracting. And I told you about this guy.
How can people sign up for this?
Use your Google and find nothing but sports.
But
Secret Clinical gives me triple sweat protection. Whew, thanks. Secret.
Before you throw another controller, maybe break up with your lag instead. Switch to Optimum Fiber, the best internet for gaming. The lowest latency in the
because this is a big number. That means that this channel is a big deal.
What are you doing, Mama?
It is not possible to know how long the U.S. military operation in Iran will last. Fear of a long, drawn-out conflict is now growing. Plus, as Americans in places like Dubai try to get out of the Middle East, we are getting a look at how the UAE is.
A lot of emergency personnel out of the UAE, out of Qatar, out of Bahrain, out of Jordan, out of Iraq. And in addition to that, Brett, the State Department suggested that every American, basically almost anywhere on this map, get out if they can. What does that tell you?
Yeah, John, the last notice you just met, I've never seen anything like that. And what that shows is the threat reporting from Iran is off the charts. That doesn't mean they'll be able to carry out all their threats, but we're clearly seeing the intent of Iran to target Americans everywhere, not just drones and missiles, probably terrorism, various asymmetric threats. Again, I have never seen notice like that from the State Department. Every American across the Middle East find a way to get out of the region. And of course, they're on their own. They don't, civilian flights, as we just heard, might not be available. What is Iran trying to do here? Why are they doing this? Why are they attacking all six countries in the Gulf? They are trying to put pressure on these countries, which have close relations with the United States, to basically say to Washington, this needs to stop. We need to de-escalate.
Now, in terms of unprecedented, you've never seen anything like it in terms of ordering everyone out of the region. There are a couple of things also that I'm not sure we've seen, which is in Doha, in Qatar, right here. The Qataris shot down, they say, 2 Iranian planes. That's extraordinary. I don't think we've ever heard that before. And then in Lebanon, the Lebanese government cracking down on Hezbollah, which is highly unusual also. This may be showing stuff's backfire on the range.
Let me break it down. I mean, strategically, 2 Gulf countries with the closest relations with Iran historically are, as you mentioned, Qatar and Oman. Iran again attacked Oman today, which is surprising, and Qatar shot down 2 Iranian fighter jets yesterday. I honestly never thought I would see that. I suspect we will see more military action from these Gulf states, maybe UAE and Saudi Arabia, maybe today over the Quebec injury, because well, hundreds of thousands of rockets and missiles can rain down on Tel Aviv. It's been knocked on its back over the multiple conflicts that have been fought since October 7th. And yesterday, the Lebanese government, for the really first time, is banned. That's something and they seem prepared to keep up for some time.
This is the jihad right now, which has been such a weapon. And for those in Ukraine, Iran's been supplying the Russians with this. I do want to ask one question about some action that the Iranians are trying to take or threatening to take. They say they're closing, essentially, the Strait of Hormuz. This is this shipping lane right here. It's just 20 miles wide, only 2 miles wide, actually, where ships can go through. 20% of the world's oil passes through that. And you can sort of see the impact of that right here. These are the straits right here. Another look. And this is a live look at all the ships in the region. And you can see right here, which is basically that bottleneck, nothing's going through.
2 miles, yeah, you're right. 20 miles wide, 2 miles for the ships. Iran has said nothing can pass. If that continues for a period of time, I think you'll see a significant effect on global oil markets. I would just say, if I'm watching this closely, oil prices are now creeping a little bit above 80. That's far above where it has been. But I just remind people, early in the Ukraine conflict, oil prices, global prices went up to 130 at one point, and we're hovering around 110. So keep this in some context. We have tools to keep the prices low, But again, Iran is trying to wreak global havoc, so the pressure comes down in Washington to pull back, and we'll see if they can succeed. But yeah, that I think the U.S. after the Iranian Navy has been announced, basically sunk everything, every asset they have, was so that Iran cannot come out and mine the straits, which would be something that would be very difficult to overcome. So I can see tactically what Iran is trying to do. It is just everything they got, drones, missiles, closing the strait. But so far, at least what we're seeing from the Gulf states is unity and actually more inclined to work with us against Iran. But it's early. We're in the third day of this.
But that's a fascinating development worth watching over the next several days. But great to see you. Thank you very much. Kate?
So there were no sirens, no warnings. Those are just some of the new details. Service members at a civilian port in Kuwait on Sunday. There's video showing smoke rising from a makeshift operations center where the service members were when the attack happened. You can see it there.
Morning, Cuzzy. What's up?
CNN Zach Cohen has more on the details.
I'm in here just chilling, you know, getting this Fluffy prepared to have babies. This week is the week where she's ovulating the most. So hopefully we'll have Kiki. We'll be having some babies soon. You know what I'm saying? What's up with you? Blessings to you too this morning. Just making major plans. Getting ready to put some shit up. You know, doing what I do. What you doing, boo?
The remains of two additional U.S. service members were recovered. U.S. Central Command acknowledging the increasing death toll in a statement yesterday, saying, quote, as of 4 p.m. Eastern, March 2nd, 6 U.S. service members have been killed in action. U.S. forces recently recovered the remains of two previously unaccounted for service members from a facility that was struck during Iran's initial attacks in the region. It goes on to say that the identities are being withheld while the families are notified. But look, this is a reminder of what Donald Trump warned in his initial video statement when the U.S.-Israeli operation first began, that he expected there to be U.S. casualties as a result, and we are seeing that number slowly increase. And it's interesting, too, because we're learning new details about where these U.S. service members were when this strike took place. It was described to us as a facility that was described as a triple-wide trailer with office space inside of it. And that there was fire still burning hours later. The walls were blown out. The inside of the facility, we're told, was completely blackened. So U.S. service members seem to have been caught off guard and by surprise by this Iranian retaliatory strike. And it's something that we do expect to see potentially more of as Iran continues to target U.S. military bases across the region.
Yeah, absolutely. 6 U.S. service members now confirmed killed in this attack. Zach, thank you very much for bringing that to us. John.
We are getting some new details just in on the damage done to one of Iran's nuclear facilities. And we are standing by. It is election.
The U.S. has shut down two embassies, one in Saudi Arabia, one in Kuwait, as Iran steps up its retaliatory strikes on American assets and allies across the Middle East. Both embassies hit by suspected Iran drone attacks. And there's also this video showing a massive inferno at one of the world's largest oil refineries in Saudi Arabia. The death toll for U.S. forces since the war began has now risen to 6 after a counterstrike against a U.S. facility in Kuwait. The State Department is now warning Americans to leave nearly the entire Middle East immediately. Inside Iran, new images showing blasts and destructions across the country. The UN nuclear watchdog now confirming the first damage to an Iranian nuclear facility since the bombing began. President Trump is warning Iran the largest strikes are yet to come. And just in the last few minutes, the president posting this about Iran: their air defense, Air Force, Navy, and leadership is gone. They want to talk? I said, too late. Today, top Trump administration officials will brief Congress on the ongoing.
Trump lying. That nigga's lying. There ain't no calls for peace talk. How they gonna call for peace talk when they bombing the U.S. embassy all over the motherfucking place? They put a threat on killing Americans everywhere across there. Where's the peace talk? Yo, what is you doing? Where's the peace talk? Ain't no motherfucking peace talk with this country. Niggas is tired of this country, bro. I gotta make me some tea or something, too. Gotta make me some tea. You know what I mean? I make me some motherfucking tea or coffee right now. Because right now, I need to wake. We need to wake. We need to wake. Get this on. Pay attention to the news. If you don't look at the news, this is very important that you do.
Iranian drone attacks, and Americans are being told to leave the region now. In an interview with the New York Post, President Trump said he would send troops into Iran if they were, quote, necessary. Joining me now, CNN Global Affairs analyst Kim Dozier and retired Army Brigadier General Steve Anderson. All right, look, the president has said he wants to destroy Iran's missile capabilities, annihilate its navy and its nuclear ambitions, and stop it from arming militant groups. General, from a purely military standpoint, can you do all of that from the air and sea, or does this eventually, inevitably, require boots on the ground?
Thank you for having me, Sarah. And the answer is unequivocally no. You cannot do that. Air power is almost always, we overestimate the impact of air power and its ability. Now, it's very, very important, of course, to conduct shaping operations. But until you put boots on the ground, you really can't execute any of those missions that the president has laid out satisfactorily. It's a bad situation. It's not going to get worse, not going to get better by putting boots on the ground, unfortunately, because really, I don't think that we're ready for that. We can't prepare. It would probably take 6 months and 500,000 troops in order to conduct an invasion of Iran. Not a good idea. Air power isn't the answer. We need to limit our objectives accordingly because we're just not going to be able to achieve all those things that President Trump thinks we're going to be able to achieve.
Kimberly, I want to just play what we heard from Marco Rubio, because there is a big question as to why this war now? Why now? And here's how Secretary of State Marco Rubio explained it. He said there was an imminent threat. Listen.
There absolutely was an imminent threat, and the imminent threat was that we knew that if Iran was attacked, and we believed they would be attacked, that they would immediately come after us. And we were not going to sit there and absorb a blow before we responded, because the Department of War assessed that if we did that, if we waited for them to hit us first after they were attacked, and by someone else, Israel attacked them, they hit us first, and we waited for them to hit us, we would suffer more casualties and more deaths.
Does that make sense to you?
No, not at all. I mean, the U.S. and Israel are allies. Israel would not launch an attack like this without the cooperation of the United States and without basically getting a green light. Plus, we know the Pentagon has told us that Israel was able to hit some of these targets with U.S. intelligence. So this was a coordinated operation. The idea that Israel was some sort of unhinged actor that was about to hit Iran and therefore we had to join them, I don't know how he came up with this, and it's left a lot of people throughout the region confused.
It is perplexing because an imminent attack, it sounds like he was talking about the fact that it was imminent from Israel and then we were responding. It is confusing the way in which Rubio put that. I do want to ask you, General, about the capabilities of the Gulf countries because they are getting hit. The UAE is getting hit, and sometimes civilian apparatus is getting hit. What kind of capabilities do they have to defend themselves when you have a large population of people who are residents there trying to figure out how to stay safe?
Well, most of those countries have American systems, Patriot and THAAD, air defense systems in particular. But one of my big concerns about what's going on right now is the nuclear capability of Iran. I mean, we still do not know where the 900 pounds of missing enriched uranium is. You know, it's been enriched to 60.
See?
The 90% in order to execute to make an actual bomb, but they've got enough material for 10 of them. Also, the centrifuges. We know they have thousands of them. Where are they? I suspect that they could be very well in this place called Pickaxe Mountain. And I think that's what President Trump was talking about on his big hit going after Pickaxe Mountain with GBU 57s, which you used very successfully 8 months ago against facilities in Isfahan and others. We need to go after that facility 300 feet deep, perhaps. They've been working on it since September. We know that there's been activity. Pickaxe Mountain needs to be a target.
I do want to ask you, Kimberly, look, Americans are being told to get out of almost the entire Middle East right now. And we know that most airlines are not flying. The space over the airways is too dangerous. There are all sorts of, drones being flown over and fighter jets being flown over those countries right now. What are they supposed to do when you also have embassies closing?
Yeah, air departure opportunities are very limited. Ambassador Huckabee in Israel has just released a video to Americans this morning telling them to take buses that the embassy has organized to Egypt and fly out that way. But this also leads to a question of, we're being told this big strike is about to happen. As Steve said, maybe it's something like B-2s dropping bunker busters. But we're also being told by U.S. and Israeli officials that in the coming 24 to 48 hours, Iran will have a lot less that it's able to launch. So what is it, this renewed threat to American citizens across the region? And that leads you to think of scary things like chemical, biological, or terror attacks. So big question marks.
Lots of question marks still yet to be answered. Kim Dozier, Brigadier General Steve Anderson, thank you both for your insight on this. It's very needed at this hour. Tom?
Brand new this morning, we learned the House Ethics Committee is investigating whether Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace tried to turn a profit on a taxpayer-funded program meant to help lawmakers cover their Washington, D.C. housing costs. A nonpartisan watchdog says there is, quote, substantial reason to believe, end quote, that Mace pocketed about $9,500 more than her actual expenses. A lawyer for Mace calls the report fundamentally flawed and suggests the narrative was influenced by her former fiancé. Mace is not seeking re-election to the House. She's instead running for governor of South Carolina. A major ruling out of the Supreme Court, and it comes via the emergency docket once again. In a 6-3 vote, the justices blocked a California policy that restricts teachers from informing parents about a student's gender expression at school. The conservative majority says parents' religious rights were being violated. California says the decision puts children at risk of abuse at home. Brand new hour of CNN News Central starts right now.
It's fucking crazy in this world, B. This world bugging the fuck out. Everybody bugging out. Shit crazy, bro. Shit crazy, bro. That's what it is. Shit crazy.
In the evening, let's get you bang up to speed on what we know. US President Donald Trump doubling down on the war against Iran, posting on Truth Social, quote, their air defense, air force, navy and leadership is gone. They want to talk. I said, too late. Meantime, Israel says it is conducting simultaneous strikes in Tehran and Beirut. New video from Iran shows huge plumes of smoke rising from multiple cities. And as Iran targets America's allies in the region, Gulf states are making it clear they will respond. The Wwiii saying today it has enough ammunition to fend off attacks for a long time. In Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, US embassies are closed after both were hit by Iranian strikes. Israel bearing down on Iranian-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon, saying the militant group still has missile stockpiles and launch capabilities. Let's start this hour with Nick Payton-Walsh, who is in northern Israel, where Israeli ground troops are ramping up their cross-border attacks. He spoke with my colleague Kate Baldwin a short time ago.
Scenes over the Tehran skyline suggesting that ferocious bombardments since this morning have been underway, with the Iranian Red Crescent talking over 700 dead so far since the beginning of this US-Israeli campaign. But you join me here, though, on the border, northern Israel connecting with southern Lebanon. In the last minutes before we started talking, I've heard what must be an Israeli jet flying low, the sounds of an explosion on the other side of that hill. Directly behind me is southern Lebanon, and this is a new front in the war here. here. Some may have predicted potentially that Iran's long-term ally, its proxy, Hezbollah in Lebanon, would potentially come to its assistance, you might say, but Israel has seized the opportunity to try and vanquish, frankly, the remnants of its long-term foe over the border here. Beirut persistently hit by explosions, what the Israelis called a center of gravity struck in the southern suburbs in the last hours. But on the other side over here, an interesting development, the first land move, essentially, of this war so far in the region. Not particularly significant, but ultimately a bid, it seems, for the Israeli forces to protect an area like this, Kiryat Shimona, which was evacuated in late 2024 with the major Israeli assault against Hezbollah. They don't want that to happen this time. Signs of life clearly evident here, and instead they are deepening, they're widening the buffer zone along the border here. 5 Israeli positions have maintained since the ceasefire began, much with Lebanese protest, but Israel says this morning that they will be putting more troops in, not to extend deeper into Lebanon, but to widen the area in which they kind of have this buffer, essentially to protect an area like this. But I think the extent of that Israeli ground force application gives you a sign as to how weak they perhaps think Lebanese Hezbollah are indeed right now. They were heavily hit during 2024. We have seen some impact, it seems, or certainly smoke along the skyline here on our way in. That may be the result of the warnings that were given out by the IDF saying that we're incoming rockets potentially on the way here. We do hear drones above, which are likely to be Israeli. Clearly intensifying is... Our response, we'll have to see if that maintains in the hours ahead.
That's Nick Pate-Marsh speaking earlier. Once again, on one of the active fronts of this war, I want to get you to 2 other key datelines caught up in the regional escalation. CNN's Paula Hancock is in Dubai, and senior political reporter Stephen Collinson is in Washington. And Stephen, let me start with you. We've just heard from Donald Trump posting on his Truth Social platform. They want to talk. It's too late, the president says. Question is, what happens next? And is there a clearly defined strategy or end game at this point?
I don't think there is, and the administration keeps coming up with new rationales for this war. Almost every time an official comes out, we've had regime change, we've had this is only about getting rid of the missiles, Iran's remnant nuclear program, and the Navy. Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday suggested that the US acted because it knew Israel was going to act, and that American troops would be in the firing line of Iranian reprisals. So there's mixed messaging on the rationale of the war. I think there's growing pressure even now, a few days into this, in Washington about how long this is going to last. The president, I mean, in some ways he seems to be having the time of his life, calling up journalists and giving commentary on this war, almost as if he's not a prime participant in it. He says that he doesn't know how long it lasts. Others in the administration say this is weeks and not months. But I think there is a political and economic clock on this. It probably is in terms of weeks and months. But the problem, as the United States has found out in the 21st century, is that it's easy to start a war. It's hard to end it. And I think the question here is whether the war aims that the US does have in degrading Iran and potentially inciting some kind of popular uprising, are they possible in the time that will be allowed by the politics domestically in the United States and the mounting economic impacts?
And this is what motherfuckers need to be aware of. Y'all niggas is worrying about the wrong shit out here. Everybody think the U.S. got all this shit that could protect niggas and this, that, and the third. If that was the case, Israel wouldn't have got hit last night. Trump out here playing battleship. He out here playing God. And y'all niggas is backing this play. It's retarded.
The kind of damage that you can see even when one of those missiles is intercepted, when shrapnel falls from the sky and hits a residential building. This is a home here in Ramat Gan, and you can see the roof has been partially collapsed in by one of those pieces of shrapnel, likely a very large piece of shrapnel. When you consider the size of these ballistic missiles, you can can have pieces of shrapnel that are as large as the length of a car that can fall in densely populated areas. I'm told that there were 7 injuries as a result of this. Most of those were light injuries, but one of those individuals is in moderate condition. We actually raced here with Israel's Magen David Adom rescue service in an emergency vehicle with a paramedic, got here very quickly on the scene, and we saw the extent of the coordination and the way in which these paramedics, military officials, police were all kind of scouring the scene to see if there were any more serious injuries than ultimately were revealed. What we also found were people who were certainly in shock as they assessed the damage. They recognized that they were alive and safe and okay, but the noise that one of these intercepts can make makes you feel sometimes like there has been a direct hit. Luckily, in this case, it was not a direct hit, but you can see all around here, you've got papers and debris, vehicles that are damaged, all of that, again, just from the shrapnel of an intercepted missile. And Becky, we've also been talking in the last 24 hours about how Israel and the United States are intensifying their strikes in Iran. A lot of that has to do with trying to degrade Iran's capabilities and its ability to fire ballistic missiles on Israel. I'm told that as of tonight, Israeli officials expect that Iran will have a significant reduction in its ability to fire these ballistic missiles at Israel. That doesn't mean they won't have any ability at all, but we will see whether those expectations come true. And if we start to see fewer scenes like this, and of course, the more destructive scenes that we've seen as well, when one of those missiles makes it through the air defense system and strikes directly on a target or a civilian area, as was the case here.
What's going to happen is a lot of fucking suicide bombers is going to be running around the streets. The United States is on high alert, especially in New York this morning. Because New York got a lot of Arabian, Iranian, Afghanistanian, Middle Eastern. There's a lot of Saudis in this country. And they saying Iran is smart as hell now because what they're doing is they're bombing all the oil spots. They're burning their own oil because they know it's deeper than what everybody's saying, bro. It's deeper than that.
We just heard from the government on that. Let's have a listen to their assurance.
We have strategic storage of ammunition, which ensures continuity and sustainability of interception in all types of weapons for a long time.
In an effort there to reassure the people of the UAE that they are safe and secure, and it has been a remarkable success rate, really, when you consider just how much has been lobbed at this country.
How you expect people to feel safe and secure, right? This is the problem. How you expect people to feel safe and secure when bombs are just going off everywhere? Pieces of metal, big pieces of metal is falling into people's houses. People are dying from the after effect of this fucking bomb and shit. Shit ain't making no motherfucking sense out here.
Good. A couple, I know overnight in Abu Dhabi there were a number of large interceptions as well. So as you say,
U.S. embassies in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia closed after Iranian attack. So all Americans that's in the Middle East, y'all fucked up.
The residents will be asking about the availability of the interceptors. They're clearly not infinite around the world, and how much more they can take from Iran. So really the message we've been hearing today from the UAE is one of reassurance, pointing out that
That's what America does too. They getting on this TV and they lying. These Iranians are going ham. They don't care. They blowing everything up, even shit in their own country. But at the end of the day, they tripping. The UAE President and Hamdan bin Mohammed Dubai Mall, 9 p.m. March 2nd. The leadership remains close to the people. Dubai's fucked up right now.
Overnight, which came overnight in the region, telling Americans to depart now because of risks of security. And of course, many would like to, but it is incredibly difficult across the Gulf, across the Middle East. most of the airspaces are still closed. Now, here in the UAE, we have seen some movement. Dubai, as of Monday night, has been allowing a fraction of the flights to leave that it ordinarily does. We've just come back from the airport. It is generally the world's largest international airport. You have 600 to 700 flights that depart daily. Tens of thousands of passengers travel through that airport every single day. It was very quiet, but there were people there who had tickets, who had been advised by their airlines to go and try and get on a flight. They didn't have a guarantee that that flight was going to take off. But we met an Irish businessman who was stuck here as he was here for meetings. We met a young family from Delhi who was trying to get home. They were here on family. On
Yo, what up?
A family that was trying to send their parents back to Latvia. They were caught here on holiday. So there are many people. Hey, Rooster!
It's serious right now. Dubai shut down, and you'd be lucky if you're American, you get out.
Consider Doha. This is one of the world's largest transit hubs. We heard from officials yesterday that when the war started, there were some 8,000 transit passengers who were in the process of moving through that airport. They are now stuck as well. So, yes, there is this advisory for Americans to leave. It is far easier said than done. Becky?
Paula, thank you. Let's bring Stephen back in, who is in Washington. And Stephen, Donald Trump, not the only administration official we are hearing from. Take a listen to Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that.
They're making excuses on why they attacked that country.
There as to why it is that the US launched its attack in coordination with Israel, of course, on Saturday morning. And what do you make of what you heard from the US Secretary of State there?
Yeah, that was quite a surprise, especially since it's coming from Marco Rubio, who's one of the more dexterous administration officials and doesn't usually cause political storms. But this, I think, is important on two issues. First of all, sort of geopolitically, it seems as though, according to his testimony at least, the United States was dragged into a major offensive war in the Middle East because Israel wanted to go ahead. I think you can make an argument that there were things that, even if that was the case, that the administration could have done to protect American troops without necessarily launching this massive onslaught on Iran.
The United States is goofy. The United States is reacting because Israel is reacting first. Israel said, we're going to attack. United States, y'all better be with us or we're going to shut down your whole country financially. Israel is controlling the United States.
Base of the Republican Party, where there's kind of a split between those who are sticking with Trump, whatever he does, but there's a small but growing faction that is increasingly critical of Israel on the...
I thought this was America. I thought this was the land of the free and home of the brave. I thought we was in control of our own shit, but it's proven fact that the United States don't even own the United States. America is owned by different countries.
Stephen Collington is in Washington. Paula Hancock is in Dubai, and you heard both from Nick Payton-Walsh on the border of northern Israel and from Jeremy there in Israel. Thanks to both of you. Let's connect you to Saudi Arabia now, which says it has intercepted and destroyed 8 drones near Riyadh in the central city of Al-Khaj. No word was given on any damage or casualties. It follows an attack on the US embassy in Saudi Arabia, which was hit by 2 suspected Iranian drones, according to sources. Their consular appointments have been cancelled today. New images are also showing the extent of the damage to a refinery in Saudi Arabia. That refinery caught fire after being hit by shrapnel from the interception of 2 Iranian drones. So Nick Robertson is in Riyadh. He has the very latest there. Nick.
Yeah, the embassy in Riyadh remains closed after those drones impacted last night. There was was the first round of drone strikes. There were no casualties. There was a fire outside the embassy. There was a warning that there were possibly more missiles incoming. And then within a couple of hours, 2 more drones impacted near the U.S. embassy inside of Riyadh. The embassy putting out shelter-in-place warnings in that intervening period, not only to the embassy in Riyadh, but to the consular office in Jeddah in the west of the country, and to the consular office in Dhahran in the east of the country. And that Dhahran in the east of the country, U.S. consulate there, has been the direct focus of a very clear and stark message an hour or so ago from the U.S. embassy here, telling residents, U.S. residents in and around that city, not to go to the consulate, to not go outside, to shelter in place. The same message for going for the consulate, that there is an imminent, this was an hour or so ago, that there's an imminent possibility of drone or missile strike there. So the ongoing nature of the U.S. embassy and consular facilities in Saudi Arabia is an ongoing targeting effort. It appears, intelligence of which the U.S. appears to have some foreknowledge of. The Saudis, as you say, intercepting a number of missiles. 5 were fired at a very important and big Saudi military airbase outside of, just outside of Riyadh yesterday. The intercepts as well that showered the Ras Al Tanura oil facility with falling debris, which set light to some of the oil facilities, some of the facilities there being shut down as a temporary precautionary measure, according to the energy ministry here. So the picture that emerges is that Saudi Arabia finds itself being pulled ever more into this war that's perceived as being, you know, an Israel-US-led war against Iran. A sense here that they don't understand what the final goals of the US administration are. A very fine diplomatic tightrope to be walked in, not wanting to get drawn in, keeping diplomatic relations with Iran. The ambassador, the Iranian ambassador, is still here in Saudi Arabia, but at the same time putting out a very strong and clear diplomatic message to Tehran that we will protect our safety, security, territory, population, that we do have an option to respond to aggression. But the notion that Saudi Arabia struggles with is where is this going? What happens? And the dangers of getting sucked into something that doesn't have a clear end goal as far as they can see at the moment.
It's good to have you.
Americans are in trouble. If you are out there in the Saudis, in the Middle East,
Head on Connect the World.
y'all niggas is in trouble. Iran is not stopping, they're not slowing down. And what does that do for our country? Pray for them people who's out there going through it, because they're going to go through a lot more. Make your circle a dot. Keep your grass cut. Watch for them snakes. Be observant of your surroundings. But most importantly, stack shit.